Hi guys, in this video I'm going to show you this little run or lick, and I'm going to walk you through it and what it consists of and how to practice it. But I'm going to take a foothold in a super important principle that I hope you'll listen to. You can also jump forward in the video and just go to the demonstration of the lick. With the taps, of course. But let's just talk about how to actually break through and take a lick like this and really learn it at the highest level. Because there's one thing I do all the time, and that everybody who ever gets to the highest level does. And that's what this video is about. It's pretty simple, it's straightforward, and you'll understand it right away. So stick with me. My name is Claus, and don't forget to download our free course by clicking the link in the description and subscribe to this channel. So what is it? Well, it's the fact that, well, when you want to learn a lick like this, what I did in the beginning is I was just, it's not that long a lick. You can just start at the one end and then, read the taps, learn it from start to end, and then just start practicing it in a loop, right? In front of the TV, when you talk to friends, by yourself in a room. But the fact is that does not work. It works for some things, but it does not work when you want to develop some amount of speed. So what do? Well, first of all, in your brain, you have a short-term memory, right? And that's really the secret to learning this at the highest level, because the short-term memory is like your processor. It's like the RAM in a computer. When you play a game, what the computer does, it takes your hard drive and then it loads information up into your RAM, your short-term memory. Because in your RAM, that is super fast. You can work with things up there, right? You can show images, you can play your game up here. And whenever you are entering a new level in the game, then the computer loads new information up into your short-term memory, and that might take a while. That's why, there might be a little pause between level 1 and level 2 where the computer needs to load everything up. So you learn the first note, then the second, then the third, right? Okay, and then the fifth. And at some point you go, hey, stop. I just have to remember this, right? I just have to remember this before we move on. And that is basically the limit of your short-term memory. Because just imagine you have this long string of notes moving in this direction, right? And your short-term memory is like a little box like this. And then I start the lick, and I load up your short-term memory. The second I'm at the level where there's too much in there, then what happens is that you can't remember before you have taken what is in your short-term memory, these 5 notes, right? And then you practice them over and over again for 10, 15, 20 times, because now you can put them in your longer-term memory, can't you? And then you can learn something new. But you say stop because, hey, I'll forget what I just learned. I'll forget the first note if you load one more note into my short-term memory. Isn't that what happens? So if you move on and you just put that string of notes in there, then I'll have forgotten this first thing, and then I don't know where I came from, and then I'm not learning anything. I'm not learning anything because I forget whatever I'm leaving to learn something new, right? So that's why you say stop. So when you feel overwhelmed, when I show you this lick, that's exactly the limit of your short-term memory. See, what most people then do is that they create virtual memory when they practice. So, and what is that in a computer? Well, if you haven't got enough RAM, then the computer can perform a trick where it loads whatever. Let's say there's just not enough RAM for what it wants to load into the RAM. It keeps some on the hard drive then. And then what happens is that when it needs it in the short-term memory, it's loading it as it moves on. So now it's embedded, it's at least remembered in my long-term memory, but you won't learn at the highest level. You can only get so far with that. So you need to use another strategy. And the strategy is to stop and say, and that's what we're going to do with this lick, instead of just learning the first thing here, as so you can remember it and then learn something new and then learn something new, you learn it and put it in the what people call the muscle memory. I don't use that word because the muscles have no memory. It's all in the brain, but it's because it's movement energy, right? And in the brain you have a special center for that, your movements. And if you get it down there, it becomes totally unconscious. It becomes automated, and that is what mastery is. It's automation. It's being able to do something, and it doesn't take up much resources anyway, right? You can just do it. It's just like a pattern. It just runs in your fingers, and it's like you don't even have to focus on it anymore much, right? So you can talk while you do it. Mastery. And that's where we want to get to. And the only way to get from short-term memory, long-term memory, to automation is to loop little parts of this lick. Loop them incessantly. Now you'll make progress. It's like it works like crazy. Now you'll make so fast progress on a couple of notes. This is the first part of the lick. Now instead of playing something that sounds musical, right? Right? Instead of doing that, now you look like an idiot, right? You look like one who should be in an institution, right? Because you play the same little thing over and over again. But see, this little thing can be loaded in the short-term memory. And because you're in that realm of the short-term memory and you can loop it round and round and round, now you have a learning process going on. You don't have to load stuff from your long-term memory all the time. That's not what you're using your resources on. The only resources that are spent on looping within the short-term memory for something as short as just 5 or 6 or 8 or maybe 10 notes, right? And you loop them around in your short-term memory. And the thing is that you can then... Now you have a focus on the same things all the time. You know, picking the first note is one thing. You pick that, and before you reach the end of your short-term memory, you return to that same pick stroke. And because you can return to it, you can remember how you did the last time. This is an almost unconscious thing, but just that focus on the hammer-ons and pull-offs, right? This is key. Please get this. Because the way to then attack a long string of notes like this is simply to create little loops, right? As soon as that loop is bigger than your short-term memory, then you're not really putting the stuff into your muscle memory. You're just remembering it. You're just in long-term memory and not in automation level. That's the key. So let's move through this lick here and really convert this into practical action so you know exactly what I mean. So you can do the exact same thing when you're learning other stuff like solos or other licks that are more than 4 or 5 notes. So let's have a look at it. I'm in the key of C here. Imagine your first position, minor blues scale shape here in the 8th fret, and I'm adding the Dorian mode to it, or the B flat major scale, which would give me the Dorian mode from a C perspective here. So I start by picking the note in the 8th fret, hammering on to the 10th, and then hammering on to the 11th. Then using a downstroke for the first note, and I'm on the G string. Then I hit the 8th fret on the B string. And in this case I'm using hybrid picking, so I could use an upstroke with my pick, but in this case I'm using my middle finger to hit that note in the 8th fret on the B string, my pick to hit the 11th fret on the G string, and then I pull off down to 10th and down to 8th. So, and this might be the limit of your short-term memory, so you might just want to go. But then I move on and I go all the way down again, so just 4 notes up and down, and then I hit the 11th fret on the B string with my pinky there and using my middle finger. And that's a really cool loop to practice. You can put in 10,000 repetitions in a couple of days and then you'll have it down. Right? Then the next thing I do is I go back again and I play the same 3 notes, but then I hit the 8th fret on the high E string again with my finger there, and then right back again. So instead of going, I go, right? So and then right back. So really slowly. And then right back again. Then I go to the 11th fret on the high E string, And from here, I move on to a slightly different movement. So now you could have a movement that says, and then just stay at that. All the time. Right? So that might be your loop, but let's move on from here, because what happens now is I go again, so I go. As I hit this note up here, I go. Again, so play a well-known sequence here. I start in the 11th fret, pick it with my finger, the middle finger again, and then I pull off down to the 8th fret on the high E string, hammer on in the 10th, hammer on in the 11th, and then I pull off again and go right back to the first finger. So I come from this. Then I go down to the B string and play 3 notes there, 11, 10 and 8. Then I hit the 11th fret on the G string with my pick. And then I go right back to the 8th fret, picking it with my middle finger on the B string. Hit the 11th fret on the G string again, so I go. And then I play down the G string, same frets, 11, 10 and 8. Pull off. And already here I could go, right, I can loop this little thing. If I don't know this sequence already, that's a really good idea. Again. And then just keep playing that to get it down into my muscle memory, so I could play. Right, and then I'd go play the 3 notes there, right? I could add them to my loop. Doesn't matter if it's 16 notes or triplets or whatever. Right? But then I could also add the last part. Right? Right? So I got this first loop, and I got the next one. That I can play 10,000 to 100,000 times before I move on. So what happens next here is that I go. So once I hit the lowest note on the E string, or G string, sorry, in the 8th fret, I go 4th finger, B string, again with my finger here, right back to the 8th fret on the G string, and then hit the 10th fret on the B string. So I go. Hammer on to the 11th, pull off down to the 10th again, and pull off down to 8th. This can be kind of a tricky little thing, hammering on when you have the 3rd finger on here. But just pretend it isn't a special challenge and just do it anyway. It will become pretty easy with time. And then I play the 3 notes on the G string in the 11th, 10th and 8th. So now we have. I can include that in my loop if I already got this down, right? Right, I got a nice loop there that can run over and over again. So let's combine it with the first. Right? Then what happens is I go. So I come from here, I go 10th fret D string with the pick the 8th fret on the G string again, and right back to the 10th fret on the D string, and pull off chromatically down to the 8th fret. So I go. So. And then I slide down to the 7th fret. So. And then I hit the 10th fret on the G string here. So I go. Again, you can create this tiny loop if this feels really new to you. Slowly. From here, I go right back to this note again in the 7th fret. So I play. And then I slide down to the 5th fret. From here, I play the same as I did down there, but in this case, I play it from the 5th fret on the G string, then the 8th fret, right back to the 5th fret on the D string again. So I go 8th fret G string, back to that note, hit the 7th fret on the G string, hammer on to the 8th, pull off again down to the 7th, and then down to the 5th. Right? So now I could go. Sometimes when you do something like this, you cannot always create a lick that you can play in a loop, but you can then just, take a short part of it and then just. And then you can. And just play it over and over again. The loop is really cool because then you don't have to watch your fingers because it just becomes like a flow. So whenever you can, create that loop. So this is it. Really slowly. From here, slide down to the 3rd, hammer on to the 5th, pull off again. And then I go 5th fret D string, 3rd fret G string, back to the 5th fret on the D string again, and then pull off. We already had that, down to the 4th, then down to the 3rd. So I go. Alright, I come from here. So I go, and then I hit the 4th fret on the B string and the 5th fret on the G string. Right, and you can also create a loop out of that. Right. And so on, right? So let's play the thing mid-tempo all the way from the top. Right, we have this loop. Right, we have this loop. But you should really focus on creating the loops that make sense to you, so there's not too much in there. So really be intelligent about this and be creative when you create these loops. Then we had, right? So please put this to the test. Take these little loops here and take the first one and take it all the way up. You don't have to go to the maximum of your physical capability, depends on where your technique is already, but just push it up where you really think that you made an enormous amount of progress on this little loop, right? Then you do the next one, then you combine the two, then you do the next one, and then you combine the three. And you might want to learn the whole thing. There's nothing wrong with that, learning the whole, so you can remember it, so it's in your short-term memory, because then you know the context of what you're practicing, and you can look forward to how cool it will be to master the whole thing. But please put it to the test. I should say that if you are on a relatively low level when it comes to technique, if you're alternate picking, and this is not alternate picking much, but if your legato technique is at a relatively low level, then you're really starting from scratch, which means that when you're practicing something like that, might take you a month to get that up to any measurable level of speed. Really, I mean that. So, but once you've done that, right, this is going to be, so easy compared to when you're starting up again. So you might be starting with a fair amount of technical capabilities, and you might be starting with none. If you're starting with none, then what you're doing practicing this lick is really practicing the technique more than anything else, right? So just be aware of that it depends on what level you're on. But it's always the best, most constructive, productive idea to work within the confines of your short-term memory in little loops, pushing them all the way up. Have fun with it. Don't forget to subscribe and go download our free course, and I so look forward to seeing you in the next video.